Yeah, so welcome to Allendale. Europeans turned up here almost exactly 200 years ago, and European management has meant when we started doing things differently in 1999, there was 1 hectare of native grass on this farm, and there was 1 hectare out of 814 hectares native grass. So that means in 200 years, most of the plants that evolved here you couldn't find. The thing we're trying to get people to understand is that constantly grazing grasses knocks out the perennials, which are the ones we really want for a resilient landscape. If you keep grazing them constantly, you will definitely knock them out. We used to do it. We used to spend a lot of money sowing expensive pastures that were full of perennials. Now we don't sow anything. The perennials are sowing themselves because the conditions have changed to suit them. So that's really one of the things we want them to understand.
This was 1 paddock, 53 hectares. Now it's 12 paddocks. The numbers say this: if you, compared to set stocking, if you're managing for recovery, the plant community in a season will produce between 2 and 3 times the biomass compared to set stocking. So that is a massive figure. Now, you hear that as a farmer and you think, oh great, 2 or 3 times the stocking rate. But to maintain a complex, diverse community, the community has to petition about 1/3 of the energy that it gets from the sun to maintain its diversity. Now what happens with agriculture is we come along, we plough paddocks up or we set stock. That is guaranteed to simplify the community because we're taking that 30% of the energy that the community needs to maintain its diversity. We're diverting that away from the community towards us. So then the community, it simplifies.
My name's Andrew Dowd. I'm a cattle trader, predominantly trading cattle at Orange, Cowra, Goolagong. I guess with RCS, it's working out where people want to get to. It is about their goals and then bring it back to what they want to do on their own particular farm. You know, if you love cattle, do cattle. If you love cropping, do cropping, and do that well. But you know, I guess I'm particularly more interested in doing it regeneratively, which happens to be also profitably. RCS, one of the skills they teach is called Grazing for Profit, so it's profit focused, but at the same time you're doing little or no harm to your soil and basically trying to improve it all the time. Well, he's been doing it for the longest time of anyone in this, well, in New South Wales, I'm guessing. So he's passionate about it. He's been doing it for longer, so we can see what he's done, and it's profitable, and it's improving, and it's really simple. And he's got time. He's spending his time doing stuff like today to share his knowledge that he's learned over the last 30, 40 years. About where he's got to now, and he's still improving the place.
So the paddock they came out of, they'd been in there for 2 days and they were going into a brand new paddock. So the paddock they went into looked the same as the one they came out of 2 days ago. It was just a comparison between how much grass they'd eaten in 2 days really and the paddock that they just moved into, and they'll be there in that paddock for 2 days as well. How many square metres to feed a sheep? No, I reckon
Where's our corner post?
Yeah, this is Ross, is it? Ross? You're Ross? Yeah, good. Okay, so we've got Frank over there. Yeah, I reckon that's pretty good. I reckon that wouldn't be far off it. What do you reckon, Dowdy? I reckon that's not bad.
You want me to step it up?
16.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
That's the longest metre I've ever seen in my life.
She made it look like, look at the legs.
Yeah, only the legs.
We're trying to teach them the rudiments of measuring grass, that was one thing, but also to show what paddocks look like after they've been grazed and starting to recover. Because prior to this bit of knowledge that we now have, we didn't know how much grass we had ever. We didn't know how to measure it, but that little technique is, how many square metres will feed a sheep for a day. If you can have a stab at that, that's an incredibly important bit of information that we've never had. And so if you don't have to be accurate at it, because you look behind you when you start moving the stock, and the paddock behind you will tell you whether you've got close to being accurate with that judgment of how many square metres we'll feed a sheep for a day. And that only takes 2 hours to measure how much grass is on this whole farm. You couldn't buy that information.
It's what we heard from David today, and one of his mantras I know is less is more. Doing less, less inputs, or particularly synthetic inputs, and just managing for what you want, not for what you don't want. If you want more particular grass species, manage for those species. Don't try and kill out the other things. Let nature take its course and improve organically. I find now, I just think, if you want more grass and you have animals, if you can just get that in your head, that's fundamental. And love your grass more than your animals,
The monoculture of conventional agriculture is what we're trying to get away from, because it's the opposite to the trend of evolution. The trend of evolution is to have diversity and elaboration over time. Agriculture in the conventional sense tends to turn it into a simplified community which is lacking resilience when things get difficult. But the water is fundamental to how the animals behave. If they're confident that the water's there and there's enough of it, they're very settled, as you can see in the background. They're just grazing. If they were worried about the water, they'd be bellowing their heads off and they'd be breaking things.
The more I've been learning along the way, it's more about that biology. It's all about the fungi, the nematodes, the bacteria, all the bits that we can't, earthworms that we can see, but all the other bits that we can't see with our naked eye. Doing all the work underground, and if we get diversity on top of the ground, that gets diversity underground, and it's just building soil carbon, which makes us more resilient, better water holding capacity, where it's not bare, so you get plenty of ground cover. Any bit of rain you get all of it. It's not going to run off and down the creek. You're going to get the whole lot of the rainfall, and it's going to hold it there, and it's going to be available for the plants to take up. Lots and lots of benefits for running the business on top of the soil, which is grazing business.
We sowed 40 grams to the hectare in here about 12 years ago, and there was so little seed that I sowed. I've forgotten I even did it. I had a bloke doing it. I sowed this tiny little bit of seed, and I was going around to have a look at. I'd sowed some oats as well to satisfy Colin Syce's desire to see if pasture cropping had worked down here. So we sowed 10 kilos of oats, no fertiliser, and this tiny little bit of seed I had left over in a butt from Colin. And I was going around in the spring to have a look at what the oats was doing, which was very little because it was a dry year. And here I saw all these unusual seed heads. And there was all these native perennials that I'd got from Colin, and it's just taken over. And it's been spreading like wildfire, and it's absolutely the cheapest and most wonderful thing that's happened on this farm, really.
Yeah, I guess they could look at their own operations now and go, okay, well, how do I get to, what are my goals? How do I get to those? And what do I need to change to be able to do that? It's the biggest thing, if I could say to them, is, love your grass more than your animals. That way, when you've got grass, you'll be looking after all your diversity, as well as your trees, all of that diversity on your farm, and just managing that so that you've got options going forward.
Allendale! The big thing I didn't actually talk about much today was the effect it has on people from a social point of view, from an anxiety point of view. It takes a lot of the angst out of farming because you feel like you've got more control. You don't have this anxiety of turning the landscape into a desert, a river of cash pouring out of your bank account you seemingly have no choice about, but you do have choices.
It's been amazing watching David over the last 25 to 30 years and visiting him from time to time and listening to him at various things. He's a wealth of knowledge and, great for all of us people like me to learn from.